So, I want to talk about a question that I discovered a few years ago that really helped me uh, get back on track with my creative discipline. And it all started back in 2016. I just started art school, um, and in all of my 100 level classes, we were asked, "What is art?" which I think is such a dumb question. But I'm not here to actually talk about that question. Um, but it does have to deal with my journey with looking at art philosophically. And as time went on and I got further into my studies and even had a stint where I took a break from school and I was trying to be self taught, I realized asking people or any kind of student what is art is not the right question to be asking. And I came to find out it's much better to ask your students or just anyone, how far do you want to take your art? And that question came about because sometime a little bit before I start art school, I had the expectation I was going to go learn animation and I was going to go get a job at a big studio like EA or whatever. Well, I went to a convention and EA was there and I listened to their presentation, their testimony, and even on some separate occasions I've met with a couple of people who work in the video game industry. And to my disappointment, I found out that the time commitment was outrageous and the fact that in most cases you would be constantly moving. I met a guy who, in less than like 10 years, I think it was a span of like 8 years, he had worked in three separate states. Because contracts are usually for like 3 to 5 years, and then, it's not uncommon for those people, the production workers, to just move on to a different studio. They don't always get to stay in state. And like this dude moved from like Washington, California, and then moved to the South. So it's just like I couldn't do that. So yeah, going to art school, I was a bit lost because keep in mind at that time, the only thing I knew was like if you were going to learn animation, you could only go to some like top studio. I like to use the analogy of like a mountain. So, for me, working at some big AAA studio is the top of the mountain. It's the highest point of the animation industry. So, like, what do you do when you realize what you originally thought was the only way, the only path for you is just that end goal is just not there anymore? Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's like you just have to find another path, but you also have to realize there is another path. And that's why this question actually saved me because it made me really think, how far do I want to take my art? Because being at the tip top is not an option. I don't want to do that. And I discovered there's this magical thing where if you want solutions, like better solutions to your life situation or just in general, just ask better questions. And that was the better question because it got that gear turning in my head. And I was like, okay, well, how far do I want to take my art? Well, I don't think I'd mind teaching or doing some casual freelance work. Because I started to discover, hey, there's this whole world of like a gig economy. Is there room for an animator in there? Answer is yes. It's not the tip top of the mountain, like working at a AAA studio, but it is just below that. Um, and that's where I am now. So for anyone who is looking to do art, to pursue art, or is in the middle of it, but they're still not sure what their end goal is, just ask that question. How far do you want to take it? And don't be ashamed if it turns out that you're just someone who really enjoys art, but you have no interest in being a professional about it. It's okay. You don't want to go into the industry. If you want it to be a really cool hobby, that's freaking awesome. If you want to find your place somewhere in the industry, even if it's not at the tip top of the mountain, that is fine. There is a big enough mountain for all of us to find a spot. And I think that's what people don't realize. Because I think some people, and just speak from experience from observing my peers. I think they felt like that was like being at the tip top was their only path. Even though if it was something they felt like inside they didn't want to do, and it was like, well, I that's too much of a goal for me to reach for. I have no interest for it. And you could see it where they just weren't as motivated to do art. It was miserable for them because they felt like they were working to build skills with an end goal that they just didn't want. They had no interest in it. And it's like when what you're doing doesn't align with what your goals are, of course you're going to be demotivated. Of course you're going to get burned out and just hate what you're doing. Um, and I can't tell you how many people would tell me, "Oh, I love animation," or "I love doing art," and they weren't like an art major. When I asked them that, they would always tell me, "It's like, oh, because I don't hate myself." It's like that makes no sense. If you love art, go do it. But I think the reason why they said they don't hate themselves is because knew that they knew about the time commitment if they were to become a professional artist, or at least they thought the only path forward was going into like a production team where that's the only place for artists is working like a slave 80 hours a week, which if anything, if you take away from this video, just understand, yeah, there are other places for you to go. um, so that's about all I really have to say about that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. uh, has anyone ever talked to you in this way before, like asking you this question? Has anyone ever posed this question to you, or did you figure it out on your own? So, hope y'all take care and see you next time.